My husband told me, if you can't trust me spending every evening with my personal trainer, Sophia, maybe we should reconsider this marriage. I looked him straight in the eye and said, you know what? You're absolutely right. The next morning, I signed the transfer papers to New York. I'd been refusing for his sake. When he texted asking what I wanted for dinner, I sent him a photo from JFK Airport. Sometimes people show you exactly who they are when you finally stop making excuses for them. The notification sound pierces through our darkened bedroom at 11:23 p.m., like a blade through silence. Another late-night message lighting up Derek's phone screen as he lies beside me, pretending to sleep. But I can feel the tension radiating from his body, the way he's holding his breath, calculating whether I'll notice this latest interruption. I notice everything now. I've been cataloging every detail for the past 3 months. The phone buzzes again with urgent persistence. Through barely opened eyes, I watch Derek reach for it with the practiced stealth of someone who's performed this routine countless times before. The blue glow illuminates his face as he reads whatever Sophia Martinez, his personal trainer, has sent at nearly midnight on a Wednesday. His mouth curves into a small smile before he catches himself, quickly schooling his expression back to neutral. He types a response, his fingers moving across the screen with intimate familiarity, the kind of familiarity that used to be reserved for conversations with me. The exchange continues for several minutes, a back and forth that has nothing to do with workout schedules or fitness goals, and everything to do with two people who can't seem to end their day without connecting with each other. Everything okay? I whisper, letting just enough sleepiness color my voice to sound natural. He startles slightly, then recovers with the smooth deflection that's become his signature move over the past few months. Sorry, babe, just Sophia with some questions about tomorrow's training session. You know how dedicated she is to optimizing my fitness progress. Right. Sophia and her midnight dedication to Derek's fitness optimization. The same Sophia who apparently requires my husband's presence at the gym for 2 hours every evening, who needs his input on weekend nutrition planning sessions, whose training methodology seems to demand Derek's undivided attention at all hours of the day and night. I murmur something non-committal and roll over, giving him space to continue whatever performance he's staging. Through the reflection in our dresser mirror, I watch him type another message, longer this time. His face is more animated than I've seen it during any conversation with me in recent memory. Sophia Martinez joined Derek's exclusive downtown gym 6 months ago as a personal trainer specializing in executive fitness programs. Former competitive athlete, advanced certifications in sports nutrition and biomechanics, the kind of professional credentials that made busy professionals willing to pay premium rates for personalized attention. Derek had been ecstatic about finding her, describing her as exactly what he needed to break through the fitness plateau he'd been experiencing, despite years of consistent gym attendance. She's going to revolutionize my approach to health and performance. He'd told me over dinner that first week, his eyes bright with enthusiasm I hadn't seen since he'd been promoted to senior partner at his law firm 2 years ago. Her background in athletic performance combined with executive wellness programs is exactly what I need to optimize my physical condition for the demands of my career. I'd been genuinely supportive then. Derek had always been dedicated to maintaining his health, spending early morning hours at the gym before heading to his demanding legal practice. He deserved professional guidance that could help him achieve his fitness goals more efficiently and effectively. Finding a trainer with Sophia's credentials felt like a smart investment in Derek's long-term health and energy management, especially given the increasing stress of his legal practice and the physical demands of maintaining peak performance in such a competitive field. What I hadn't expected was how quickly personal trainer would transform into wellness consultant and then into whatever this relationship had become. It started innocently enough, the way these situations always begin. Extended training sessions that ran past normal gym hours because breakthrough fitness results don't follow convenient schedules. weekend workshops to develop comprehensive nutrition strategies, late-night calls to discuss recovery protocols and performance optimization techniques that apparently couldn't wait until their next scheduled session. All perfectly reasonable explanations for two professionals working together to achieve specific health and fitness objectives that require dedicated attention and personalized program development. But then came the changes in Derek himself, subtle shifts that accumulated over weeks and months until I was living with someone who looked like my husband, but operated according to completely different priorities and emotional rhythms. He started caring about his appearance in ways that went far beyond his previous commitment to professional presentation and basic fitness maintenance. The practical workout clothes he'd worn for years gave way to high-end athletic wear that emphasized his improving physique while suggesting expensive taste and attention to brand aesthetics. Designer compression shirts that showcased the muscle definition he'd been developing under Sophia's guidance. Athletic shorts that cost more than most people's monthly gym memberships. Shoes that were engineered for specific types of training but looked impressive enough to wear as lifestyle statements. His morning routine expanded from efficient shower and coffee to elaborate preparation that involved grooming products and attention to details I'd never seen him prioritize before. New cologne that was subtle but expensive, the kind that suggested sophistication and personal care. Hair products that created perfectly styled but natural-looking results. Important client meeting today, he'd explain when I commented on the extra effort, the new clothes, the increasing attention to his physical presentation. Sophia says peak physical condition translates directly to professional confidence and client perception. Sophia says, the phrase that was becoming increasingly frequent in Derek's explanations for changes in his behavior, his schedule, his understanding of what success required in both fitness and professional contexts. Except the important meetings multiplied. Every day brought new professional situations that required him to look and feel his absolute best. New opportunities that demanded the kind of physical confidence that apparently only came from Sophia's specialized training programs. Our bedroom became a staging area for increasingly elaborate athletic costumes, selected with the care usually reserved for special occasions. Our bathroom counter filled with supplements and recovery products I'd never seen him use before. The most significant change was in how Derek spoke about his goals, his health, and increasingly, his identity as someone committed to peak physical performance rather than just basic fitness maintenance. The evening training sessions became routine, with explanations that grew more detailed and elaborate as they became more frequent. 6 p.m. became 7, then 8, then 9, with Derek texting around 5 with apologetic messages about extended training protocols or breakthrough workout techniques that couldn't be interrupted without losing crucial progress. Always with Sophia, always requiring both of their immediate attention, always involving training methods that apparently couldn't be properly executed during normal gym hours, despite the fact that Derek had maintained consistent fitness routines for years without needing to spend entire evenings away from home. You know how complex Sophia's training methodology is, he'd say, arriving home at 9:30 with protein shakes from expensive health food stores and explanations that felt rehearsed rather than spontaneous. We finally cracked the plateau I've been struggling with, but this kind of breakthrough requires following the program exactly as prescribed, regardless of time constraints. Sophia and I. The phrase that was replacing my trainer or the gym in Derek's descriptions of his fitness achievements and health improvements. I wanted to be supportive, wanted to celebrate Derek's obvious physical improvements, and the energy boost that was clearly benefiting his professional performance. His health had always been important to him, and this partnership with Sophia was producing visible results that were enhancing both his confidence and his career prospects. Good personal trainers were difficult to find, especially ones who could work effectively with demanding professionals who had specific goals and limited time availability. If Derek had found someone who could optimize his fitness progress while accommodating his complex schedule, I should be celebrating their professional relationship rather than analyzing it for signs of personal complications. But the professional relationship was starting to feel like something else entirely, something that had less to do with fitness training and more to do with the way Derek's entire emotional landscape seemed to revolve around Sophia's opinions, methods, and approval. The first real warning sign came during our monthly dinner with Derek's law partner Michael and his wife Karen. We'd been discussing the firm's recent successes, Derek's increasing client roster, the physical stamina required for managing such demanding casework, when Michael mentioned something that made my stomach drop. "Derek and Sophia make an incredible team," he said, cutting into his salmon with precision while Karen nodded knowingly. "The way they coordinate their training sessions, anticipate each other's fitness strategies, communicate without words during their workouts. I've seen them at the gym, and it's like watching athletic choreography." Coordinate their training sessions. I looked across the table at Derek, who was suddenly very interested in his wine glass, studying its contents with intense focus. In 8 years of marriage, Derek and I had never developed that kind of seamless physical coordination. We were compatible partners who supported each other's individual pursuits, but we'd never operated as a unified team pursuing shared physical goals with synchronized precision. "They spend so much time together. I sometimes forget Derek has a wife at home." Michael continued with the thoughtless humor of someone who doesn't realize he's delivering devastating information. "Last week I saw Sophia adjusting Derek's form on the leg press, and the level of physical trust and communication they've developed is remarkable for a trainer-client relationship." Physical trust and communication. Karen laughed, adding her own observation with casual cruelty that came from not understanding the impact of seemingly innocent comments. "I told Michael they look like couples who've been training together for years, the way they move around each other and coordinate their exercises without discussion." Derek laughed, but it sounded forced and uncomfortable. "Sophia is just very professional about developing effective training protocols. Good form requires hands-on correction and detailed communication about body mechanics and movement patterns." Hands-on correction and detailed communication about body mechanics. The sophisticated explanation for why his personal trainer was apparently more physically intimate with my husband than I'd been in recent months. But I was fixated on Michael's casual observation about Sophia adjusting Derek's form, the physical trust they developed, the way they moved around each other without needing verbal coordination. When was the last time Derek and I had shared that kind of physical intimacy and nonverbal communication? When had we stopped moving together as a coordinated team and started existing as separate individuals who happened to share living space? That night, I found myself paying attention in ways I'd been unconsciously avoiding, cataloging details I'd been dismissing as insignificant, but which were accumulating into a pattern I could no longer ignore. The way Derek's phone lit up constantly during our dinner conversations, with messages that made him smile before he remembered to look apologetic about the interruption. The animated tone he used when describing Sophia's training innovations, her unique approaches to fitness optimization, her insights about the connection between physical conditioning and professional performance, the protective way he responded when I asked casual questions about their training relationship, defending her methods with the kind of enthusiasm people usually reserved for discussing family members or close personal friends, rather than professional service providers. "She's just very intuitive about what my body needs," he said when I wondered aloud why so many training sessions required them to work past normal gym hours. "We've developed a rhythm that makes complex exercises feel natural. It's rare to find someone who understands your physical capabilities and limitations so completely. Someone who understands your physical capabilities and limitations so completely. Not someone who supports your health goals, or encourages your fitness progress, or celebrates your achievements despite not sharing your specific training interests. Someone who understands his physical needs in ways I apparently never had, despite 8 years of marriage and countless shared experiences. Our own conversations had become increasingly functional rather than intimate. Updates about schedules, household logistics, social obligations that needed to be coordinated around his expanding training commitments. When I tried to engage him in discussions about his fitness progress, his responses were polite, but distant, generic updates about workout results without the detailed explanations he'd once shared with me. It was as if he'd found someone else to be physically intimate with, someone who understood his body and its needs in ways that made our conversations feel superficial by comparison. November brought the fitness competition crisis that would crystallize everything I'd been trying not to see. Derek's phone rang at 8:30 p.m. on a Friday while we were watching a movie together, some romantic comedy we'd chosen specifically because it required no emotional investment and we could just enjoy being in the same space. "Sophia?" he answered, already reaching for the remote to pause our evening together. The transformation in his voice was immediate, shifting from pleasant but distant to something warmer, more engaged, more authentically connected. I watched his face change as he listened to whatever emergency required immediate attention. Concern shifted to determination, then to something that looked suspiciously like excitement. "I'll be right there," he said, already standing and looking around for his gym bag, his training shoes, the expensive athletic wear he'd bought specifically for sessions with Sophia. "Don't panic. We can figure this out together. We can figure this out together." The automatic assumption that whatever challenge Sophia was facing required both of their immediate attention, that problems in her professional life were automatically problems in his fitness journey. "What's the emergency?" I asked as he gathered his gear with movements that suggested extensive practice of this routine. "There's a couples fitness competition next weekend that Sophia wants us to enter. The registration deadline is tonight, and she needs to know if I'm committed to the intensive training schedule required to be competitive." Couples fitness competition. The words hit me like cold water. Derek and Sophia competing as a team in an event designed for romantic partners, requiring the kind of physical coordination and trust that comes from intimate knowledge of each other's bodies and capabilities. "Couples competition?" I repeated, needing clarification about what exactly he was agreeing to participate in. Derek's face showed brief discomfort before he launched into an elaborate explanation about how many fitness competitions use the term couples to describe any two-person team, regardless of their actual relationship status. It's about athletic partnership, not romantic connection. Sophia thinks we have the coordination and training synchronization to be genuinely competitive. Athletic partnership requiring coordination and synchronization they developed through months of intimate physical training. The kind of partnership that apparently demanded immediate evening consultations to discuss commitment levels and intensive preparation schedules. "Can't this wait until your next scheduled session?" I asked, knowing the answer, but needing to establish that I existed and had opinions about how our Friday evening was being allocated. Derek paused in his preparations, his expression shifting to that patient tone people use when explaining obvious realities to someone who's being unreasonable. "Emma, this is a significant competitive opportunity. If we're going to enter, we need to modify our entire training approach for the next week. Sometimes fitness goals require sacrificing personal convenience for athletic excellence." He kissed my forehead quickly, a perfunctory gesture that felt more like checking off an obligation than genuine affection. "I'll try not to be too late. Order whatever you want for dinner and don't wait up if you get tired. This kind of strategic training can take hours when you're preparing for actual competition." And he was gone, leaving me alone in our living room with a paused romantic comedy and the growing certainty that I was losing my husband to someone who understood his physical needs and athletic potential better than I ever had. That night stretched into the longest weekend of our 8-year marriage. Derek didn't come home Friday night, texting around midnight that he and Sophia were working through complex competition routines that required extended practice sessions. The text included a photo of them in the gym mirror, both looking exhausted but exhilarated, their bodies positioned in some kind of partner exercise that required intimate physical coordination. Derek's hand was on Sophia's waist, steadying her during what appeared to be a challenging balance movement. She was laughing at something he'd apparently said, her face bright with joy and athletic accomplishment. Saturday brought a brief appearance around noon when Derek returned home to shower and change clothes, moving through our house like a visitor who was being polite but needed to get back to more important obligations. "How's the training going?" I asked while he rifled through his closet looking for specific athletic wear, clothes that were designed for serious training rather than casual fitness maintenance. "Incredible but demanding," he said, selecting compression gear that showcased the muscle definition he developed under Sophia's guidance. "She's pushing me beyond what I thought my body could achieve. The partnership routines require absolute trust and physical coordination that takes hours to develop properly. Absolute trust and physical coordination developed through hours of intimate training sessions, while I waited at home, wondering if my marriage was dissolving in real time." "Sounds like she's really bringing out your athletic potential," I said, testing whether he'd recognize the implications of what he was describing. "She is," he agreed, without hesitation or apparent awareness of what he'd just admitted. "It's amazing what happens when you find someone who truly understands your body's capabilities and can push you to achieve things you never thought possible. Someone who truly understands your body's capabilities, not someone who supports your health goals generally or encourages your fitness journey from a distance, or celebrates your achievements without necessarily sharing your specific training interests. Someone who understands his body in ways I apparently never had, despite 8 years of physical intimacy and shared experiences." Sunday evening brought Derek home looking energized rather than exhausted, glowing with the satisfaction of someone who just had the most physically fulfilling weekend of their life. His eyes were bright, his posture confident, his entire presence radiating accomplishment and joy. "We did it," he announced, practically vibrating with satisfaction. "Mastered the competition routine in ways that will make us genuinely competitive next weekend." Sophia had this breakthrough around midnight last night that solved the coordination challenges we'd been struggling with. Midnight breakthroughs involving physical coordination challenges that required intimate body awareness and trust. They'd been training together past midnight, exploring the limits of their physical partnership while I'd been home alone, wondering if my husband was falling in love with someone else. "Sounds incredibly intense," I said, trying to match his enthusiasm while fighting the growing certainty that I was witnessing someone describe the most romantic weekend of their life, even if they weren't ready to acknowledge the romantic elements. "It was extraordinary," he said, his voice carrying a dreamy quality I hadn't heard since our honeymoon. "There's something magical about finding someone who moves the way you do, who can anticipate your physical needs and respond perfectly. We barely had to discuss the routines because our bodies were so synchronized." Someone who moves the way you do, who can anticipate your physical needs. Again, not someone who supports your goals from a loving distance or appreciates your dedication to health without necessarily sharing your specific fitness interests. Someone who understands his body and its needs in ways that had created physical intimacy I couldn't compete with or replicate. That weekend marked the point where training sessions became competition preparation, and fitness goals required Derek to travel with Sophia to athletic events in Chicago, Denver, and Phoenix, where their physical partnership demanded increasingly elaborate time commitments that left our marriage running on practical logistics rather than emotional connection. December brought the development that made our situation impossible to ignore or rationalize away. The phone calls started happening late at night, usually around 10 p.m. when we were settling in to watch television or read, moments that used to represent our reconnection time after busy days. Derek's phone would buzz. He'd glance at it, and his entire demeanor would shift from pleasant domestic companionship to focused athletic consultation. "Sorry, it's Sophia. Recovery protocol question that can't wait until tomorrow's session." He'd step out to our back patio, leaving me alone with muted television and the sound of his animated conversation drifting through the glass doors. I couldn't make out specific words, but his tone was different during these calls. more intimate and engaged than I'd heard during our conversations in months. The discussions stretched longer each week. 20 minutes became 30, then 45, then over an hour of detailed consultations about training techniques, recovery strategies, and competition preparation that apparently couldn't be abbreviated or postponed despite the late hour. He laughed during these calls. Genuine, delighted laughter that made me realize I couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed like that during our conversations. When had I stopped being able to make him laugh? When had our interactions become so functional that joy had disappeared from our daily exchanges? When he returned to our living room, he was always apologetic but vague about the consultations requiring such lengthy discussions. Training modifications, nutrition adjustments, competition strategy refinements that needed immediate attention and detailed planning. What kind of training questions require midnight consultations? I asked one night after he'd spent over an hour outside discussing some undefined athletic challenge. He settled back onto our couch, phone finally silent, but I could sense part of his attention was still focused on whatever conversation he'd just finished, rather than fully returning to our shared evening. "You know how precise athletic training can be," he said, maintaining distance even in our small living room. Sophia has these insights about optimization that come at unexpected moments, and when you're preparing for serious competition, you have to address training concerns immediately or risk losing momentum. Sophia and her optimization insights that required my husband's immediate attention at all hours. The athletic genius whose training methodology apparently couldn't be properly implemented without Derek's constant availability and enthusiastic participation. It just seems like a lot of after-hours consultation for what's supposed to be a professional trainer relationship, I said, testing whether he'd recognize the implications of their constant contact. Derek's response was immediate and defensive, his voice taking on the protective tone people use when someone questions a relationship they're not ready to examine too closely. Sophia is going through a difficult transition right now, moving her training practice to a new facility, establishing herself with a completely different client base, adapting her methods to work with the specific equipment and space limitations of the downtown gym. She needs support and guidance from someone who understands both the athletic challenges and the practical realities of building a successful training practice. Support and guidance from someone who understands. The sophisticated explanation for why my husband was providing more emotional availability to his personal trainer than to his wife. "I'm just saying, it feels like she's depending on you for more than professional athletic training," I said, trying to express my growing concerns without sounding like a jealous wife who couldn't handle her husband's fitness success. "That's what good training partnerships require," he replied, his tone suggesting I was being unreasonable by questioning the dynamics of a professional relationship that was clearly beneficial for his health and athletic development. Mutual support, availability when needed, willingness to prioritize each other's success over convenience or traditional boundaries. Prioritize each other's success. The phrase that crystallized everything I'd been trying not to understand about where I stood in Derek's hierarchy of important relationships. The phone never seemed to sleep anymore. It buzzed during our dinner conversations, interrupting movies we were watching together, lighting up our dark bedroom at all hours with messages from Sophia that apparently couldn't wait for their next scheduled training session. When I asked about the constant contact, Derek explained that Sophia was struggling with the business aspects of her training practice, needed emotional support during her professional transition, required advice on everything from client retention strategies to equipment purchases for her expanding practice. "She's very vulnerable right now," he said, as if this explained why his personal trainer required more attention and emotional energy than his actual wife. Building a successful training practice is incredibly challenging, especially for women in the fitness industry, who have to work twice as hard to establish credibility and retain clients. Vulnerable. The word that started appearing frequently in Derek's descriptions of Sophia, always delivered with protective concern, usually reserved for family members, rather than professional service providers. This woman, who'd built a successful athletic career and transitioned into personal training with impressive credentials, was apparently too fragile to handle basic business challenges without my husband's constant guidance and emotional support. I started sleeping in our guest room, telling myself it was because Derek's late-night conversations were disrupting my sleep. But the truth was more complicated and painful. Lying next to someone while they prioritized another person's emotional and professional needs over your shared bedtime felt like torture. I wasn't ready to endure every night. From the guest room, I could still hear Derek talking to Sophia through the walls, his voice carrying differently at night, softer, more intimate than the professional tone he used during business calls or casual conversations with friends and colleagues. Sometimes I caught fragments of conversation, reassurances about her training methods and business prospects, encouragement about her potential for building something meaningful in the competitive fitness industry, promises that her professional challenges would get easier with time and support. I couldn't remember the last time he'd spoken to me with that kind of gentle certainty, that unwavering confidence in my abilities and future prospects. January brought the fitness expo that would provide all the clarity I'd been unconsciously avoiding for months. A major athletic trade show in Atlanta, where Derek and Sophia would be demonstrating their partnership routines and representing their gym's training programs to industry professionals and potential clients. I wasn't invited, despite the fact that these kinds of events usually included spouses and partners in social activities and networking opportunities. Derek explained that this was a purely professional trip focused on athletic demonstration and business development, not the kind of event where personal relationships would be appropriate or useful. But I saw the photos on Sophia's Instagram throughout the weekend. Derek and Sophia in matching athletic wear, demonstrating complex partner exercises that required intimate physical coordination and trust. Their bodies moved together with the kind of seamless synchronization that spoke to months of intensive physical partnership. In one photo, Derek was supporting Sophia during some kind of advanced yoga pose, her back arched against his chest, his hands positioned on her waist, with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how her body moved and what support she needed. Both of them were laughing at something that had happened just before the photo was taken. Another image showed them during what appeared to be a couples massage session offered as part of the expo's recovery and wellness programming. Side by side on massage tables, both looking relaxed and comfortable with the shared experience. But the most devastating photo was taken during the expo's evening networking event. Derek and Sophia at a cocktail party, both dressed in elegant athletic wear that suggested they were a team, a partnership that extended beyond professional training into something that looked very much like romantic companionship. Derek's hand was resting on the small of Sophia's back as they posed with other fitness professionals. She was leaning into him with the kind of casual intimacy that suggested this physical closeness was natural and comfortable for both of them. They looked like a couple. Not just training partners or professional colleagues, but two people who were romantically involved and comfortable displaying their connection publicly. Monday evening brought Derek home from Atlanta, glowing with professional accomplishment and personal satisfaction. He moved through our house with energy and enthusiasm I hadn't seen in months, describing the expo's success and the business connections they'd made for future training opportunities. Sophia and I were the hit of the partner demonstration sessions. He said, unpacking gym bags filled with promotional materials and business cards from potential clients. The coordination we've developed really impressed industry professionals. Several gyms want to hire us as a team for specialized training programs. Hire us as a team. Their partnership had evolved beyond personal training into a business collaboration that would require even more time together, more travel, more shared professional goals that had nothing to do with our marriage. Sounds like it was an incredible opportunity for both of you, I said, trying to match his enthusiasm while calculating what this meant for our already strained relationship. It was life-changing, he said, his voice carrying the kind of excitement usually reserved for major personal milestones. There's something amazing about finding someone who shares your vision for what fitness partnership can achieve. Sophia and I are going to build something revolutionary together. Build something revolutionary together, not support each other's individual goals, or appreciate each other's dedication to health and fitness from appropriate professional distance. Build something together that would apparently define the next phase of Derek's life and career with someone who wasn't his wife. February brought the confrontation I'd been avoiding for months, triggered by Derek's preparation for what he described as a crucial business meeting with potential investors interested in funding their expansion into specialized couples fitness training. He was getting ready with the kind of careful attention usually reserved for the most important professional presentations of his career. Expensive suit that emphasized his improved physique, cologne I'd never smelled before, hair styled with products that created a polished but approachable appearance. Another investor meeting? I asked, watching him select accessories that completed the image of successful fitness professional rather than married attorney. The biggest opportunity yet, he said, adjusting his tie with practiced precision. Sophia and I are presenting our business plan for a chain of partner fitness studios. If this goes well, we could revolutionize how couples approach health and wellness together. Partner fitness studios. A business plan that would formalize their relationship into something permanent and legally binding, requiring them to work together indefinitely while building something that had nothing to do with our marriage. Sounds like a major career change, I said, testing whether he'd considered the implications of this business partnership for our relationship. It would be, he agreed, checking his appearance one final time before gathering material it was apparently going to be the most important presentation of his professional life. But when you find someone who truly understands your vision and can help you achieve things you never thought possible, you have to be willing to take risks for extraordinary opportunities. Someone who truly understands your vision, not someone who supports your dreams from a loving distance or encourages your professional growth even when it doesn't directly benefit them. Someone who shares his vision in ways I apparently never had, despite 8 years of marriage and countless conversations about our shared future. That evening, I made a decision that felt both inevitable and terrifying. I opened my laptop and began seriously researching something I'd been avoiding for over a year. The job opportunities that had been accumulating in my inbox from the New York marketing firm that had been trying to recruit me for 18 months. Senior creative director position with full autonomy over campaign development and client relationships. Salary that was 70% higher than my current position. Equity options that could be genuinely life-changing if the firm continued its rapid growth trajectory. Most importantly, it would allow me to rebuild my professional identity around something that belonged entirely to me, independent of anyone else's fitness goals or business partnerships. I'd been turning down their offers because taking the position would require relocating to New York, disrupting the comfortable life Derek and I had built in Chicago. Our social connections, our professional networks, the shared routines and familiar places that had made our city feel like home. But as I sat in our empty house at midnight, listening to Derek's animated phone conversation with Sophia about their business presentation results, I realized I'd been protecting a life that existed primarily in my memory rather than current reality. Derek had emotionally relocated to his partnership with Sophia months ago. I was the only one still trying to preserve something that had already been fundamentally altered by his investment in a relationship that offered him physical intimacy and professional passion I'd never been able to provide. 3 a.m. brought Derek home with the kind of satisfaction that comes from achieving something genuinely meaningful. He moved through our bedroom quietly, trying not to wake someone who was supposedly sleeping, but was actually calculating whether our marriage could survive another day of his increasing emotional investment in someone else. "How did the presentation go?" I whispered, letting him know I was awake and available for conversation if he wanted to share details about his evening. better than we could have imagined," he said, his voice carrying enthusiasm that made my chest tight with recognition. This was exactly how he used to sound when describing our early dates, our engagement, the future we'd planned together before his emotional energy became focused elsewhere. The investors loved our vision for partner fitness. Sophia's presentation of our training methodology was flawless, and the chemistry we demonstrated during our workout segment convinced them we have something genuinely revolutionary to offer. Revolutionary chemistry demonstrated through workout segments that required intimate physical coordination and trust. The kind of partnership presentation that apparently convinced investors they were witnessing something special and worth funding. "Sounds like an incredible validation of your business concept," I said, testing whether he'd provide any details that might help me understand where I fit into his future plans. "It was extraordinary," he said, settling into bed with the satisfied exhaustion of someone who just achieved a major life goal. There's something magical about finding someone who can match your vision perfectly and help you realize potential you didn't know you had. Someone who can match your vision perfectly, not someone who supports your dreams unconditionally or believes in your potential consistently or loves you enough to celebrate your successes even when they require personal sacrifice. Someone who matches his vision in ways I apparently never had and never could, regardless of how much I wanted to support his goals and celebrate his achievements. The next morning, I made the phone call that would change everything permanently. "Derek, we need to talk," I said when he appeared in our kitchen, already dressed for another day of building his future with someone who wasn't his wife. "About your partnership with Sophia. About our marriage, about what you actually want from your life." He sat down with the careful movements of someone approaching a conversation they'd been dreading, but knew was inevitable. "I've been watching you for months," I said, choosing my words with surgical precision. "The late nights, the weekend training sessions, the way you light up when you talk about Sophia's insights and your shared goals. The constant communication, the business plans, the way you've built your entire future around someone who isn't your wife." Derek's face went through rapid calculations about what this conversation meant and how he should respond to avoid consequences he wasn't ready to face. "Emma, if this is about the time I've been spending on fitness and business development, I can explain the strategic importance." "I don't want explanations anymore, Derek," I interrupted, using the firm tone I'd learned to employ during difficult client negotiations. "I want honesty about what's really happening between you and Sophia." The directness of the question seemed to hit him like a physical blow, his confident posture deflating as he realized this conversation couldn't be deflected or postponed indefinitely. "Are you in love with Sophia?" I asked, my voice steadier than I'd expected, given the magnitude of what I was asking and the implications of whatever answer he provided. The question settled between us like a bomb with a visible timer. Derek stared at his coffee cup, his mouth opening and closing as he tried to construct a response that wouldn't detonate what remained of our marriage. "It's complicated," he whispered finally, the words barely audible but carrying more truth than months of elaborate explanations about professional training relationships and business partnerships. "Complicated. The word that means yes, but I don't want to deal with the consequences of admitting it directly." "Actually, it's remarkably simple," I said, opening the folder I'd prepared with documentation of credit card charges from expensive restaurants, travel receipts from fitness competitions, and a timeline of evening sessions that had steadily increased over months. "You've been having an emotional and physical affair for months. You spend more time with Sophia than with me. You care more about her opinions and approval than mine. You save your best emotional and physical energy for her while giving me whatever's left over." I spread out the evidence systematically, like presenting a case that had been building for months without either of us acknowledging its implications. "You've been living two completely separate lives, Derek. Your authentic life with Sophia, where you feel physically powerful and professionally passionate, and this maintenance relationship with me, where you go through the motions of being married, while your real emotional investment is elsewhere. He was crying now, not manipulative tears designed to avoid consequences, but genuine sobbing that comes from being forced to confront truths you've been avoiding. Emma, please. Sophia and I work incredibly well together professionally and athletically, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. I married you. I chose you 8 years ago. You chose me 8 years ago, I corrected gently, reaching across the table to take his hand, feeling the expensive watch I'd given him for our anniversary, and the wedding ring that apparently no longer held the meaning it once had. But for the past 6 months, you've been choosing Sophia every single day. Every late training session, every weekend competition, every time you light up discussing her insights while barely listening when I talk about my work or anything that doesn't involve your fitness partnership. I paused, letting that reality settle between us before continuing with the statement I'd been rehearsing for weeks. I don't blame you for falling in love with someone who matches your athletic energy and understands your physical potential in ways I never could. But I won't stay married to someone who's emotionally and physically committed to someone else. The finality of that statement seemed to shock him into a different kind of awareness. For the first time in months, Derek was looking at me like I was a real person with legitimate feelings rather than a practical detail in his increasingly complicated life. "What are you saying exactly?" he whispered, his voice carrying the fear of someone who suddenly realized they might lose something they'd been taking for granted. "I'm saying that I accepted the New York position yesterday. I start in 3 weeks, and I'll be filing for divorce on Monday." His face went through the same rapid calculations I'd witnessed during his conversations with Sophia. But this time, the shock was followed by growing comprehension, as he realized I wasn't bluffing or trying to manipulate him into choosing me over his fitness partnership. "You can't be serious. You hate the East Coast pace. You've always said New York is too aggressive, too disconnected from the kind of balanced life we wanted to build together." All accurate statements about opinions I'd held when I believed our marriage was worth preserving, when staying in Chicago felt like protecting something valuable rather than enabling my own systematic marginalization in someone else's life. People change, Derek. Priorities shift when circumstances make it clear that what you've been protecting isn't actually worth the sacrifice anymore. He stared at me with the expression people wear when they realize they've fundamentally miscalculated someone else's intentions, capabilities, and willingness to accept unacceptable situations indefinitely. "This is about Sophia," he said, his voice carrying accusation rather than acknowledgement of his own choices. "You're jealous of our professional partnership, and you're trying to punish me for achieving my fitness goals and finding athletic fulfillment." The deflection was so perfectly predictable that I almost laughed. Transform the conversation into my inadequacy rather than his choices. Make this about my inability to handle his success rather than his systematic investment in someone else's emotional and physical needs. This isn't punishment, Derek. This is me finally accepting that you've found someone who makes you happier than I do, someone who understands your body and your goals in ways that bring out the best version of yourself. I paused, letting that acknowledgement sink in before delivering the statement I'd been refining for weeks. I want you to be with someone who makes you feel the way Sophia does, someone who truly understands your athletic passion and can match your energy for building something meaningful together. And I want to be with someone who chooses me first, consistently, without having to be convinced that our relationship is worth prioritizing over other opportunities. The tears were flowing freely now, but I could see something else in his expression. Relief? Maybe. Or recognition that I was finally brave enough to say what we'd both known for months, but been too afraid to acknowledge directly. "I never meant for this to happen," he whispered, his voice carrying the guilt of someone who'd made choices without fully considering their consequences. "I know you didn't plan it," I said, standing up from the table and feeling lighter than I had in months despite the weight of what I'd just destroyed. "But it did happen, and now we both have to decide what we want to do with that reality." 3 weeks later, I was standing in my new Manhattan apartment, surrounded by boxes and the strange excitement that comes from building a life that belongs entirely to you. The job was everything I'd hoped for. Challenging, creative, surrounded by people who appreciated marketing innovation as artistic problem solving rather than just revenue generation. For the first time in over a year, I found myself actually excited about Monday mornings, eager to tackle campaigns that required my full creative attention rather than going through professional motions while managing someone else's emotional crisis at home. Derek texted occasionally during those first weeks in New York. Updates about the investor funding they'd successfully secured, Sophia's expansion of her training practice to include the specialized partner programs they developed, their plans to open the first fitness studio focused exclusively on couples training and athletic partnerships. I was genuinely happy for his professional success, relieved that he'd found someone who could match his athletic ambition and physical energy in ways I'd never been able to achieve, despite years of trying to support his fitness goals. But the most significant development came 6 weeks into my New York life, delivered through an unexpected text message from Derek himself. "Emma, I wanted you to hear this from me directly. Sophia and I are together now, officially. We're also engaged. I know this might be difficult to hear, but I wanted to be honest about where things stand. Thank you for being brave enough to end our marriage when I wasn't strong enough to admit what I really wanted. I hope you're finding happiness in New York." Reading his message in my Upper West Side apartment, surrounded by the carefully curated life I'd built entirely according to my own preferences and priorities, I realized I felt nothing but genuine relief and happiness for his decision. He'd found someone who could appreciate his athletic passion and physical potential without feeling inadequate or marginalized by his success. Someone who matched his energy for building something meaningful together, who understood his body and its needs in ways that created the kind of partnership I could never provide. 4 months later, I met James at an advertising industry conference in Miami, a creative director who understood the challenges of building compelling campaigns from complex brand requirements, someone who shared my passion for innovative marketing solutions and strategic storytelling. Our first conversation lasted 3 hours, covering everything from digital media trends to the best restaurants in our respective cities. For the first time since my early 20s, I was talking to someone who matched my intellectual energy and professional interests in ways that felt effortless and natural. We've been together 8 months now, and I finally understand what Derek meant about finding someone who complements your strengths perfectly without requiring you to diminish other aspects of yourself. James and I collaborate on freelance projects together, travel to industry events where we're both genuinely interested in the content, spend weekends exploring New York's neighborhoods, and planning creative adventures that excite both of us equally. For the first time since college, I'm in a relationship where I never have to compete for attention or convince someone that our connection is worth prioritizing over other options. James chooses me consistently, enthusiastically, without needing to be convinced that what we have together is more valuable than alternatives. The divorce was finalized 7 months ago, handled through mediation, with the kind of respectful efficiency that's possible when both people acknowledge they want different things from love and partnership. Derek kept the Chicago house and his established life there. I kept the New York opportunity and the freedom to build something entirely new. We divided our shared assets fairly, without acrimony or attempts to punish each other for the failure of something that had simply run its natural course. 5 months ago, Derek and Sophia opened their first partner fitness studio in downtown Chicago, expanding their athletic collaboration into a business that serves couples looking to strengthen their relationships through shared physical challenges. When I saw their announcement in the industry newsletter, I felt nothing but admiration for their success and gratitude that they'd found a way to build something meaningful together. Last month, James and I attended a marketing conference in Chicago where Derek and Sophia were presenting their brand development strategy for fitness partnerships. When we ran into each other at the networking reception, the conversation was genuinely warm and free of awkwardness or unresolved tension. Derek looked happier than I'd seen him in years, more confident and physically vital, like someone who'd finally stopped compromising essential parts of himself for the sake of maintaining relationships that didn't fully appreciate who he was. "You look incredible," he said, and I could tell he meant it completely. "New York obviously agrees with you." "It does," I replied, meaning it just as completely, "and Chicago obviously still suits you perfectly." We talked for 15 minutes about our respective careers, our new relationships, the different paths we'd taken that had led us both to more authentic versions of ourselves. There was no lingering resentment or regret, just recognition that we'd both made choices that allowed us to become people who were better suited to our actual needs and desires. Walking back to my hotel with James, I realized something profound had shifted in how I understood what had happened to my marriage with Derek. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger requires ongoing emotional investment in someone else's choices, and I'd completely redirected that energy toward building something that actually served my interests and brought out the best aspects of my personality. Instead, I was grateful. Grateful that Derek had been honest enough with himself to pursue what made him happy, even if he hadn't been brave enough to end our marriage before exploring his connection with Sophia. Grateful that I'd been strong enough to recognize when I was fighting for something that was already over. Most importantly, grateful that we'd both learned the difference between settling for compatibility and holding out for someone who truly matches your energy, interests, and vision for what partnership can look like when both people are fully invested. Every morning when I wake up in my Manhattan apartment, watching the city come alive outside my windows while James makes coffee using the precise brewing method we've perfected together, I remember that moment in our Chicago kitchen when everything changed. The moment I stopped fighting for someone who'd already emotionally and physically left our marriage and started fighting for the life I actually wanted rather than the life I thought I was supposed to want. The most important lesson I learned through the dissolution of my marriage and the construction of my new life. You can't fight for someone who's already decided they'd rather be fighting alongside someone else. But you can choose to fight for relationships and opportunities that actually appreciate what you bring to them. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is give them permission to pursue what makes them genuinely happy, even when that happiness doesn't include you. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to accept less than you deserve from people who are supposed to prioritize your connection above other options. When Derek delivered that ultimatum about trusting his relationship with Sophia or reconsidering our marriage, he thought he was manipulating me into accepting an unacceptable situation. Instead, he gave me exactly the permission I needed to choose myself over a relationship that had already ended in everything but legal documentation. The best revenge against someone who doesn't appreciate what they have is living well without them. But this wasn't revenge. It was liberation. Liberation from trying to be enough for someone who'd already found what they thought was better elsewhere. If this story resonated with your own experience of recognizing when a relationship has run its natural course, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. The hardest part about ending something that used to work is accepting that good people can become incompatible, and that choosing yourself isn't selfish when the alternative is enabling someone else's emotional unavailability. Sometimes people do you the greatest favor of your life by showing you exactly who they are and what they actually value. Derek showed me he was someone who would choose physical attraction over emotional commitment, excitement over stability, someone else's understanding over mine. And in showing me who he really was, he also revealed who I could become when I stopped trying to be enough for someone who'd already decided I wasn't. Don't miss more stories about people who chose self-respect over comfortable dysfunction. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell for more content about navigating difficult transitions with dignity, clarity, and commitment to building the life you actually want rather than the life you think you're supposed to accept.